fingers crossed we end up on the right side of this story as well. Even if that is a player leaving the Bundesliga, I appreciate. We'll see what happens with that one. And there's a couple of other players, actually both from the same club, funnily enough. Red Bull Leipzig, we're going across this time a divisive club in Germany, naturally, but two attacking talents especially who have been linked with us recently. Xavi Simons, so quite young, almost a strange deal that Red Bull did with Paris, wasn't it? That short 2-year deal, but almost being primed for a sale. I think that was obvious. And the one thing I did want to ask you, Ninad, on this, that the suggestions from the UK media that if it isn't Wirtz, who Liverpool are clearly trying to sign, that Simons will come in as the alternative, or he's second on the list, if you want to call it that. Is it right to compare the two players, or is that a bit harsh on Xavi Simons?
I think I can see where the comparisons are coming from, in that Xavi Simons does play in a sort of similar role to Wirtz at Leipzig, even if it is in a slightly different system. I would say that Simons is a lot more offensively involved, in that his maybe duties are maybe further forward a lot more. So you may not see him being involved as much in sort of deeper build-up play, etc., but you will see him sort of pull off every now and then these amazing sort of outside of the boot passes from just behind the halfway line, and that's been sort of like a trademark of his. So yeah, I think there are some similarities between the two, but Xavi Simons is a lot more offensively minded, and I think he's a bit more of a goal scorer, but with the sort of right attacking unit in front of him. Maybe there's promise for him to sort of be part of this really strong attacking unit. Obviously, at Leipzig, he's already had Lois Openda, Benjamin Sesko, players who have really taken to him, and they've formed really, really potent attacking combinations on multiple occasions this season. But yeah, I think there are plenty of similarities between the two, so I can see why the links are being made between the two players. Yeah.
It is interesting, and maybe the difference when we look on FB Ref is that Simons also has two profiles, but one's as a midfielder and one's an attacking midfielder / winger. So I suppose that the question is, I appreciate it's different systems at the same time. Where would you say Xavi Simons' position is? Where do you think he would line up in his ideal scenario?
Again, Dave, I think it's sort of, in terms of the position, I think it's very much similar to what Wirtz can provide, in that he will want to be in that sort of playmaking role. Maybe even he might be happier to play again a little bit wider, because he does like the ball to his feet and then dribbling past players and then creating space or finding runners that way. So I think it's one of those two things where he's going to be fighting for the number 10 spot with Dominik Szoboszlai, or fighting for the left wing spot with Cody Gakpo. Yeah, I think those are the sort of two areas that I can see him fit in the Liverpool system. It would be interesting to see how Arne Slot sees his talents fit into the system, because I think he is very versatile. But again, I think he obviously prefers to play more on the left-leaning positions. So even if he does start in central areas, you can almost always see him sort of drift to the left, collect the ball in wider areas, beat his man in 1v1 duels, and then just release the pass for the on-rushing forwards beyond the last line. So yeah, I think that's where we'll probably see him play if the deal does come to fruition.
It is an interesting one, and it's almost going to seem like a little bit like I'm picking on the physicality of the Bundesliga, but a bit like Frimpong, not the biggest player, and that's quite often the concern, shall we say, that are highlighted. Do you think he is ready to make that step to the Premier League, be it a bit more physical, the nature of the game? Do you think he's ready for it?
I think he might be, and I think again there's an element of again having a trade-off, in that obviously he without being the biggest player on the pitch, he can still affect the physicality of the Premier League, in that he is quite intense off the ball. Playing in the Red Bull system means that you are inevitably having to press a lot, and that's been a feature of Red Bull teams throughout the years. So I think again, Xavi Simons is another player like Wirtz who offers a great deal of defensive work and a good amount of work rate off the ball, as you can see on his defensive percentiles there.
Yeah.
He is average or above average as compared to most attacking midfielders across the top five leagues. So certainly nothing to complain about as such in terms of his defensive work. I think he can um, use that to his advantage. But there will be with a player like Frimpong, with a player like Xavi Simons, there will be inevitably a sort of learning curve, if you will, physically in terms of adjusting to the Premier League. But what he can bring offensively with his vision of passing, with his ability to find himself in attacking positions, again, a really really inventive player, much like Wirtz, very keen to play sort of 1-2 combinations with players
Yeah.
and get in the box that way. And in fact, just last on match day 34, which was the last weekend against Stuttgart, I remember he scored this back heel goal
Yeah.
off balance in
Yeah.
in the penalty box, which was a genius piece of improvisation from him. And I think you can expect to see a lot more of those things from him if he does come to the Premier League. Yeah, very much an entertainer. He's come through Barcelona, Paris Saint-Germain, now at Leipzig. So he's had a big sort of grounding in elite football setups. So there's already a lot of positives to take from that. So again, it's just taking that next step, and at Liverpool under on a slot with a team that has a sort of a solid sort of place for him to sort of grow, and maybe have some room for error as well. As unforgiving as the Premier League can be, I think Liverpool is a place where now players can go with a little bit more confidence that this is a stable team, this is a stable core of players where we can maybe take our time to slightly bed in, and then be given the chance to flourish. So yeah, I think it's only a positive if players like Xavi Simons and Florian Wirtz are either of them are likely to come to Anfield. Yeah, you can promise to be very happy with both of them.
Excited for that one. And when we talk about physical players and maybe concerns or question marks around that, maybe it's the opposite a little bit with this player, Benjamin Sesko. I mean, when I look at Sesko, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, the raw attributes are pretty special, as in the physical gifts that he has, no doubts about it. How highly is he regarded, or how highly is he seen in the Bundesliga right now?
I'd say Sheshko is one of the more raw strikers at the moment, as good as he is. In terms of being rated, I think he is up there with one of the most talented players in the Bundesliga. Certainly one of the most exciting strikers in the league in terms of the promise that he has shown so far with his goals and with his ability to score showstopper goals. Like he's got
Yeah.
tremendous amount of power in his feet, and yeah, he's not afraid to take a shot, sometimes from crazy distances and unrealistic angles even. But yeah, he's got a lot of promise, and I think there's good reason to be excited about him and his future.
And it does seem when and obviously to pick up what you said, because he sometimes does try the outrageous and sometimes it comes off, sometimes it really doesn't at the same time. There's almost a split camp around Sesko in terms of the raw attributes are worth pursuing, shall we say. Others saying he's maybe not quite refined enough, but he stayed at Red Bull last year almost. It felt like he was being primed to come to the Premier League or somewhere else this year coming or this summer coming. How do you see it with Sesko? Do you think it is the right time, or actually, in terms of just his pure development, is another year in the Bundesliga better for him?
It's an interesting question. I'll be honest. I think if a club had to invest in him now, it would be slightly more on the project signing end of things, where you might not expect him to deliver immediately. Because let's be honest, this is still a very young player. He's still sort of
Yeah.
finding his feet in the top European leagues, and another season in the Bundesliga might be good for him. but another season elsewhere, and even in the Premier League, for example, will demand a lot more of him, and we might see different results from that process. Might not necessarily be better results, but they will be different. I'm being very careful with my words there, because I think there is a lot of promise with him, but he is raw. He still has, I think, a lot of development to do in terms of his finishing. As good as he is with with his ability to generate power from shots, with his dribbling,
Yeah.
I think he physically, like you say, he is, in terms of his athletic ability and in terms of his build and his size, he he is as physically ready as a young player probably can be for the Premier League. And in many senses, he sort of reminds me of Darwin Nunez with his physical attributes when Nunez arrived in the Premier League. And there's been comparisons with Haaland, or that Sheshko can be the next sort of Liverpool's Haaland, if you will. Um, and I think for that to happen, there's going to be a little bit of a development period for him and a lot of adjustment. But yeah, you can see the science in this player that with the right coaching, with the right system, I think it's gonna be very, very interesting to see how he develops. And another sort of interesting point to sort of note about his sort of trajectory so far is that he's obviously played in two-man striker systems. So again, sort of flipping that around. And so far at Leipzig, he's always played alongside Lois Openda, and not played as much, further up front as all by himself. So I think that's going to be another sort of learning curve element with him. But the promise is there. The promise is there, and the excitement is there for good reason. And I think Sheshko, if you are getting someone like Sheshko, you have to treat it more like a project signing. So at least give him one full season to bed in, and then expect better results from him. So yeah.
It is interesting to see. And let me say, 4 real players there who we'll have to see how the summer unfolds, but could potentially end up at Anfield, all with very different attributes. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. We wanted Bundesliga expertise, and that is what we got. So all it really leaves me to say is, Ninad, for giving us the time, answering all the questions and that breakdown analysis. It is greatly appreciated.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.
And ladies and gents, that was another Bundesliga special for Anfield Index.